Today, I'm sitting down with Max Lobovsky, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Formlabs. Formlabs is a 3D printing company. Do you want to just start off by actually talking about why there's been so many 3D printing companies and like why yours has been able to be successful?
Well, the dream of 3D printing is huge. It's to be able to go from a digital model to a real thing quickly, cheaply, easily. Anyone who's ever made something knows that, the bigger problem is going from an idea to a real thing. And anyone who's ever made something in the physical world knows that that is usually a painful, long process. And usually your idea gets kind of cut down and limited, and the thing you get out isn't exactly what you imagined. So any tool that streamlines that process is something that's really valuable, but also just like conceptually feels amazing. So people have been excited about 3D printers for a long time.
Let's go back to when you first started the company. I know the biggest thing was like a Kickstarter campaign, and I think you raised like $3 million through this Kickstarter campaign. How did that happen?
Yeah. So we started the company and we had this idea to make the first, to bring stereolithography or resin 3D printing to the desktop, and also to make the first professional desktop printer. Because at the time, there were starting to be a couple desktop printers, but they were really sort of hobbyist, didn't work well. And we wanted to make something that would do what the $100,000 printers could do, but get it to everybody. We built a prototype, borrowed some money from my cousin, built a prototype, and then we raised a small round of venture capital. And
That was like $500K, something like that.
1.8 million was the first real round of funding. And then about a year later, which in retrospect was pretty fast, we launched the first product on Kickstarter, the Form 1. And
what were you guys expecting going into that?
I remember really well because it was, it was a big moment and stressful and all that. And we went out for beers the night before, and we were kind of taking bets. And we knew we were going to beat the target you put up on Kickstarter. That wasn't the main thing. But I think like the most optimistic that anyone else in the room was saying is like, maybe we'll get to 1 million. And I think we can get to like 1.5 million. And everyone thought I was crazy. And then we got to 3 million. And like I think we got to 1 million in 2 days or something. So it was really fun in those first, like the first day was just like nonstop celebrating basically. Because like all our friends were coming by and like keep it following the Kickstarter, and it was really fun. And then probably by the second day, it was stressful again because now we knew we had to like ramp up our production plans, and that shit was even more real than we expected.
Yeah. Okay. So coming out of that, and like you've got all these orders now, and hundreds and hundreds of people are kind of like counting on you. How did you kind of think through actually getting those first printers out?
We had a plan before that. It wasn't the right plan, but
what was that plan?
I think we had been, before the Kickstarter, had been planning to set up our own final assembly facility, and like we had been considering contract manufacturer. And after we saw the trajectory of the Kickstarter, we knew we had to go with the contract manufacturer because it's going to be too much to ramp up. And I think we heard enough advice like it's harder to make things and ship them than you expect, and like it's an 80-20 kind of thing where it feels like you're done, you're not done. So we like padded the timeline and all that, but of course not enough. So I think we were supposed to, but it wasn't too bad in the end. I think we announced it in September, said we would be delivering like in volume in February or March, and we were doing it in May. So
it was like actually relatively on schedule for a Kickstarter
compared
campaign.
To other Kickstarters, yeah. But it did not feel, those few months did not feel good for sure. Like
what was going
really
through your mind while, I know every great founder really hates like not making their customers happy and like having delays. So what was going through your mind at the time?
I mean, just every day's problem basically of like, we knew customers are waiting for us, but it's not like you think about that all the time. You think about the next thing in front of you, and grinding through that. And then we had another really, I would say a 2x multiplier on the stress at that point, because a few weeks after the Kickstarter, we had been sued by the largest 3D printing company in the world for patent infringement.
Hell yeah.
So I literally got a call out of the blue from the CEO of 3D Systems saying that he's suing us for patent infringement. He started with a bunch of bullshit about he didn't want to sue us and his board made him sue us, which is not a good way to open a business relationship with
It's like,
somebody.
I'm a great guy, but I got to do this. Sorry, dog.
Yeah. He really got off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had that going on for the first few years of the company. And like in the middle of this Kickstarter craziness and trying to fulfill it, we had this company trying to sue us out of existence. And that was their explicit goal. Their offer was like, you can hand over your company and have jobs at 3D Systems. That was like the settlement proposal.
So I know, now it may be kind of cool to get sued by a bigger company, but I imagine that in 2011, 2012, it wasn't as cool. Did you kind of think to yourself, like, this is the end at all during that time?
I knew this was an existential threat, and like pretty much any lawyer you talk to says like, oh yeah, the minimum you're going to spend fighting this is like $3 or $4 million or something like that. Like the total amount of money we had raised was less than $2 million.
And then like all the orders combined.
Yeah, all the orders combined are $3 million, but that's for the products we were going to deliver with like not amazing gross margins at that point. So if it went the way most of the lawyers told us it was going to go, we were not going to make it. On the other hand, it was kind of fun to fight it because well, like it actually helped that very early on, they told us very clearly that like, we want your company to go away and we're kind of dicks. So like, you probably don't want to work with us.
So you had like a little bit of a chip on your shoulder.
Well, there was like no other option.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to
roll over and die.
Yeah. I'm not going to roll over and die. I'm going to try. What was frustrating though, it just made everything else harder. It's not just dealing with that lawsuit, but every single time you hire someone, they're like, what's the deal with this lawsuit? Are you even going to be around? Even customers are asking. And then we did want to raise more venture capital. And that was a huge multiplier to that challenge. But we managed to do all those things while the lawsuit was going on. And then eventually we paid them a bit of money, but not that much. And that's all behind us.
How did you navigate that?
We mostly ignored what the lawyers were telling us because everyone was kind of saying like, you have to kind of settle it now because of all these negative impacts on the business. And we said, no, actually, we're going to like basically slow roll it because we know we're getting stronger quickly. Like we know people love this product and they're going to keep buying. We're going to get revenue. We also knew the patents were generally expiring in the next few years. So we managed to do various things to kind of slow down the pace of the lawsuit. And then eventually when they saw there's not much time left on their patents, they accepted a reasonable settlement.
Interesting. Do you think it kind of like forged a specific type of culture because you had that happen so quickly?
I think it definitely tested my abilities as a leader of getting people to focus on what's important. Is that at all points in a company, there's so many things you could be worrying about, and that seem like the most important thing, like what investors care about, or this patent lawsuit, or maybe in a later stage of the company, the stock price. But most of those things don't make any impact on like, are you able to deliver more stuff to your customers? And so this was an early strong test of like, can we as a company and me, personally help the team like stay focused on what really matters? Can I try to shield the unnecessary stress from people and just help everyone like deliver an awesome product?
Yeah. How much sleep were you getting at that time?
I don't know, but that was, I only worked. I didn't really have hobbies or family or anything else at that time.
Do you think that was like the most stressful point, or?
It was stressful. I think in general, my stress level is inversely related to how much money we're losing. So that was, definitely we're burning money. I mean, we weren't shipping anything either. And felt like the company was like, it's like kind of, we had almost just taken off, but we were still like tethered to the ground and possibly about to crash. Yeah.
when you're kind of navigating that sort of situation where you have some fires that are needing to be put out, but you also have to keep on building the company, like the lawyer fire is probably a big distraction for the most part. How are you kind of thinking or making decisions day to day when you're in that environment?
I think one of my strengths is kind of compartmentalizing the stress, and like you take everything in, feel stressed, maybe talk with your friends or wife about it and get the feelings out, and then you have to be able to step back and say, okay, like what do we need to do to move forward? And then especially as when you're in a company with a team, you have to think about what can each person do and how can I help them do the best thing? Because if I'm freaking out about something, if someone else can't really help me with that, like it's not helpful. One of our board members has a nice line that in a business, stress should only flow in one direction, and that's upwards. So like while it's good to set like ambitious goals and push people to the limits of their ability, like you don't need to bother them with something that they can't do a lot about. That's just unproductive stress. So better just
it's good to not like, just off the cuff, let someone that's, working on something know shit's hitting the fan and we might be fucked.
Yeah. And it was tough because we were, one meeting. Yeah, like you get off the phone with the CEO of 3D Systems, then you have to like go into a engineering design review and like not freak out. And
Interesting. Yeah. How did you decide to kind of set the bar for the first like Form 1 product that you wanted to create versus, I imagine you want to create somewhat of like a really great thing right off the bat, but I also understand that in order to do that, it takes years to really work out the kinks.
Yeah. I have a good answer for that because basically everything that was in the Form 2, which is a lot more than is in the Form 1, was already like on the table when we were designing the Form 1. So like a cartridge system, so you didn't have to pour resin in, Wi-Fi, touchscreen, a bunch of these things, which we knew like should be in the final form of this product, but we cut them all for the Form 1 because we knew they weren't actually critical to proving out this product. So we did cut quite a bit from like what we would have liked to build. And even then, it still wasn't, we still didn't really have the resources to deliver what the Form 1 should have been. Like, it wasn't reliable enough. There was a lot of repairs and too high of an RMA rate and all that.
And did you know all the like maybe not necessarily issues, but like slightly suboptimal things that you could have hypothetically made better on the next version, but you had to ship the first version?
So those features that were missing, I think we were pretty clear on. Yeah. We dropped the Wi-Fi. It's going to be okay. What proved to be much harder, which I think is true of like most products, but especially in 3D printing, is just making something reliable that executes even on its core function. Once you distribute it to a bunch of different people who use it in different ways and have manufacturing variation and all this stuff, it can't be understated how hard that is. Like when your prototype that works in the lab meets the real world at scale, so many things break in so many different ways. And even though we like had enough people tell us that was be the case, and we're trying to be diligent about that, like it's still worse than you expect.
What are the like decisions that if you could have gone back and kind of made different calls, what would those calls have been?
The single biggest decision that we should have made differently in the history of the company, we started with two ideas. One is to bring stereolithography to the desktop. The other was to make a professional desktop printer. And most people think of that first one because that's like the obvious aspect of our product that we made sort of this first desktop resin printer. The second idea was actually more important. And if we applied that idea to FDM, we would be a larger company today because ultimately that's a larger category than SLA or resin.
So why'd you decide to go after this instead of that?
At the time, I thought like completely incorrectly that we were like maybe too late for FDM because there were a couple of companies doing it. In retrospect, there's been like multiple generations of like failed companies since that. Like we could have tried multiple times since then. And the companies that were around then are completely irrelevant today, like MakerBot. So that was wrong. And I think I was doing masters at MIT, and I think I fell for the probably the classic MIT startup failure mode of like, well, we want to work on something valuable, so like it must be something very hard, and
you got to feel the pain a little bit.
Yeah, well, that like if it's going to be like important new technology, it's going to be like really hard technology, and like lasers and galvos and resin and all this stuff that like no one has made working on the desktop. Like that's really hard. Let's work on that. And FDM, this is this like glue gun on a 3-axis. Like that's not that hard. So like that's not that valuable. But that's really dumb. And a lot of hard tech companies fail in that way, where they like you need to orient yourself around the problem, not the solution. This is such a basic mistake that so many startups, especially hard tech startups, make. They say like, oh, I figured out how to point lasers with a galvanometer at photopolymers, and that's really cool. Like, let me do something with that. But the world doesn't care about that. The world cares about what problem you solve for them. And the more you focus on the problem and then be flexible about the solution and just say like, well, hell, if I could solve that solution with an off-the-shelf thing, great. Or, so you should orient around the problem, not the solution.
I kind of love, this is like the inverse of, I think Warren Buffett talks about, he wants to step over like 1-foot bars. There's some people that want to do like the high jump hurdle over the 11-foot bar.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes things where the like output or value is not correlated with the difficulty of doing the thing.
There's no correlation at all, and that's like the basic thing that a lot of people get wrong. Is it's kind of reasonable to think that there might be, but there isn't.
Yeah. Okay. What are you doing today with that kind of like new framing in your mind?
What are we doing today? I mean, this has been years of evolution and
you're 14 years in. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've still fully mastered that understanding. What are we doing today? You always want to look at like a lot of different things you could do, and not just the first thing you get excited about. That's one thing that really helps, because then when you can compare, it makes it a lot easier to say like, well, there's this really hard thing that might be valuable, but then there's this easy thing that's like equally valuable. So that makes it easier to pick. So trying to always like be considering a number of options and directions really helps. And then I think thinking about the timeline that you want to contribute to the world in is really useful. So like there's really hard stuff that probably will be important 10 years from now. But for a product company like ours, like the kind of right sweet spot is maybe like 3-year time frame. Like a full printer development is like maybe 2.5 years, something like that. So like thinking about what's the best thing we can get out there in about 3 years. And
do you kind of keep that in mind while you're thinking about a like longer term arc of the business, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, so I think we've gotten pretty good at this 3-year thing, and now we kind of need to add back in the 5 and 10 year view, because there are things that you can't do in 3 years. I just think that a lot of companies start with the 10-year thing, and you won't survive 10 years, like unless you do something good in 3 years.
Do you think your story is a little bit more of being a cockroach?
Yes, I think that's a reasonable description of Formlabs. I mean, there are a lot of 3D printing companies that have raised a lot of money in the last 10 or 15 years, like billions of dollars. And I think we're like, in the Western world, I think we're like the only successful large new 3D printing company. In China, there's a number.
I'm kind of thinking about this, and I would almost consider it to be like Tesla, where there's, I don't know how many different auto companies have been started, but none of them actually serve. Like even today, many of the public companies are like negative gross margin to a drastic degree, like Lucid and Rivian.
It's hard. I mean, I think one thing that makes this business fun, but also really hard, is it's like unreasonably complex for what's not that big of a business. Our engineering is like equal parts hardware, software, and materials. We manufacture hardware with contract manufacturers in China. We run our own chemical plant in Ohio. We sell in like 100 different countries. We sell from like almost consumer level e-commerce up to like multi-million-dollar enterprise sales. So there's like way too much going on, and you kind of have to do all of it to deliver on that original vision of like, I want to give you a 3D model and you give me a part. Well, we have to do all those things to make that happen.
So once you've built the Form 1 and you're going towards the Form 2, how did you decide like what to build in-house here versus like going to China and creating like that entire supply chain?
So the Form 1 was built with a contract manufacturer in San Diego. The Form 2 was built with a contract manufacturer in Hungary. And we were starting to leverage more and more Chinese suppliers.
How'd you find the Hungary supplier?
So
contract manufacturer.
We wanted to go somewhere lower cost than the US. And my close partner here, David Lakatosh, our chief product officer, his father happens to run the largest independent contract manufacturer in Hungary. So we had that connection. And we thought Hungary could be some kind of middle ground between working with China, closer time zone, and more English language. And it worked. I mean, Form 2 was very successful. But I think you're asking like about what to do internally versus outsource. I think the right approach, I don't know if we've always done this, but like try to do as little as you can do to solve the problem. And then like only take something on in-house when you're sure about two things. One is that like you really have a unique problem. And two, that you now know like enough about this problem that you're like approaching the state of the art of knowledge. And I think there's another place a lot of hard tech startups get it wrong. Like you need to try to do as little as you can do, because just delivering whatever complete version you're trying to do is so hard. You like take on as little as possible. And we're a very vertically integrated company now. We do a lot, but it's like each one is like reluctantly, basically. And it makes a lot more sense once you get a little bit bigger and you have the volume and you'll have the knowledge. It's a really good example from Form 2. The galvanometer. So the galvanometers are these special electric motors that position a mirror that we scan the laser in a number of our products. And really cool because they position that mirror to like 100 nanometer type accuracy at kilohertz. Normally they're really expensive, sort of specialized industrial components. We had found some low cost ones that we use in the Form 1 that are meant for laser light shows. Laser light shows don't really need to be accurate. So they're not exactly right.
It's a little bit like the SpaceX, just using like an AC unit out of a refrigerator because it costs, less than $1,000, whereas the rocket one costs $1 million or $2 million.
And my guess is like they probably don't actually use just an AC unit out of a refrigerator anymore, but they started with that, prototyped with it, and learned enough to now build a better one than any errors. So we went through that. So as we were working with the Galvo companies and like helping them improve the accuracy, we're starting to realize like we kind of know how to build one of these, and we're looking at the volumes we're approaching, and like actually we might be the largest consumer of Galvos in the world at this point. So we started like a parallel project to develop our own for the Form 2. And we kept it like compatible so that if it failed, we could use the off-the-shelf one. It was like just at the end of the timeline when it like just started working, and we swapped it in, and that was a success. It makes the parts smoother, makes the printer print faster, and we still build our own Galvos to this day.
What do you think the biggest moments are throughout the company history where if things hadn't gone right, bad things would have happened? They not have survived.
I mean, obviously the 3D Systems patent lawsuit was a big challenge. We've been sued 2 other times for patent infringement. Those weren't as existential. I mean, the first like hardest hurdle was just the first round of funding. I mean, that was very hard for me. I'm not great at fundraising. If I didn't meet my co-founder Natan, who's much better with investors, I don't think the company would have gotten started at all.
Interesting. What kind of got you over that hurdle on that first fundraising round?
Oh, it's a really good story. We were like months into pitching different investors. We had like a prototype in our basement in Cambridge, and we'd like bring investors by and show them. It would only print for like a few minutes successfully at a time. So we have to like time the pitch to like bring them down to the basement before it fails. but people, especially in Boston, and this was 2011, in Boston, 2011, 23-year-olds with no work experience, starting a hardware company, nobody was funding that at all. There's like approximately 0 examples of that. So, but it was interesting enough that we'd meet with someone and they'd say, I'm not going to invest, but like, I know someone else who'd like to come and check out your basement.
I'm not dumb, but like, I know a guy.
yeah, basically. So we kept getting meetings, and like months into that, like we were at Legal Seafoods in Harvard Square, which is like a common place you'd have a pitch dinner. And we were pitching VC from Best Buy, which apparently had a VC arm at that time. At that point, we already learned the lesson that like, if they're not interested, like immediately, it's not going to work. So we knew by the end of the dinner, there's no chance here. But then we got home. I shared an apartment with my other co-founder, David Craner, and he got an email from a friend of ours from MIT with like a screenshot of a retweet of an original tweet from @mcaper, saying, on the patio at Legal Seafoods in Harvard Square, overhearing 2 entrepreneurs pitching 3D printing. And we're like, what the, that's us. How did this even happen? How do we find this? And then we look up @mcaper, and that's Mitch Caper, who is the founder of Lotus Software, Lotus Notes, like basically developed the first killer app for the PC. And we were amazed. If it was up to me, that was probably another point when we would have like failed to start the company and nothing would have happened. But luckily, David was more outgoing than me, and so he's like, let's send him an email. And he found his email address somewhere and sent him like a 1-line email saying, that was us. Did you hear anything you like? And a few weeks later, he met with us and ended up leading our first round of investment. It was I just have to add that it was a really good lesson for me as a like naturally like introverted and quiet engineer at that time, at least, who like kind of doesn't want to believe that like speaking loudly at parties and meeting random people is like,
you were pitching under duress.
Yeah, but like didn't think that that's like a way to be successful or like a way to achieve your goals. But that was like a very clear lesson that like, yeah, like helping to make yourself lucky by meeting people actually like really works, and you should put some energy into that.
Do you think without that like one email and that like first check from him, this thing just doesn't happen?
Very possibly. We had at the other time, there were like actually like 2 people who led the round. Joey Ito, who had just joined the MIT Media Lab as a director, also they kind of co-led the round. So we had also just met him, and maybe it would have happened. I don't know. But it
get to rerun the world and see what happens.
Yeah. It definitely felt like it changed the whole game.
You know, I think everyone kind of has like a superpower, or at least everyone great has a superpower. And I guess yours may not be pitching. How did you what is your superpower? And then how did you kind of find other people who had different superpowers that were complementary?
Can I have 2 superpowers?
Yeah, you can have 2 superpowers.
That's unreasonable, but
yeah, everyone should have at least one. If they don't have one, there's an issue. You know, if you have 2, that's great.
I think the two things I'm best at. One is identifying young, promising people before they've actually accomplished something big, and betting on them and working with them to build something good. I think we've had a lot of really talented people at Formlabs, and like ultimately the success of Formlabs is not based on my superpowers. It's based on the superpowers of the team that I've assembled.
Your ability to kind of assemble people.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is like going back to that focus thing of helping to cut the distraction for people and for a product, and say, what do we actually need to get done here to make this great?
And for your like co-founders, what are their superpowers?
So David Craner left like a year in to Formlabs. Natan Linder has always been on the board and sort of an advisor, and he's awesome at he's really talented at spotting talented people as well. I would say he's very strong at that. And then I think really good at, much better at the crafting a story and building building relationships with key people than I am. But we have a lot of like I mentioned, David, our chief product officer. We have a number of people who've been here since the beginning who are basically part of the founding team, as far as I'm concerned. Who've all brought different amazing abilities.
And when you say that you are like good at identifying talent that hasn't achieved great things yet, but will in the future, what are you looking for in those people to be able to spot them?
One sort of like, I spend a lot of time thinking about how to interview and hire and assess people, but like the simplest rubric I have is you could kind of boil down any person to 2 traits. Are you smart? And are you willing to do the job that needs to be done? So the second one is like the more subtle one. And what I found is there's a lot of smart people who are either have a very clear idea of what they want to do that doesn't align with what you want to do, or are missing the ability to like actually understanding what needs to be done is like maybe the entire battle or at least half the battle, and are like maybe not willing to put time into that. But people who want to understand like, how can I be most valuable here? What needs to be done? How can I adapt? I've got my skills that I'm great at, but this problem needs something else. So like a classic example, like lots of great engineers like want to go to CAD or code like as their home base for solving something, but a lot of problems engineering are best solved with a telephone. Like call a supplier or call an expert or something like that. A
little bit the man with a hammer syndrome.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. But like the smarter you are, the more you think, oh, this is not a hammer. I have like the ultimate tool here. But actually the most capable people recognize like there's almost like a different tool for every scenario. And you need to personally, like the hard part is being personally flexible, because like maybe you're that introverted engineer and the telephone doesn't come so naturally
it's not even on your like checklist of things that you do in your head.
But it's the single most powerful tool, or like email or chat or whatever. It's the single most powerful tool because that's how you access all other humans and human capabilities in the world. But yeah, just generally like being flexible about the way you work and what you see, like restricting your ego a little bit about who you should be and what you should do. Like there's this thing about, the CEO should also be the janitor and that kind of thing. Like, yeah, I really believe that if you're capable and then you really dedicate yourself to like, what's the best way I can be useful now, and then do whatever it takes to do that's unstoppable.
What have been the moments where you felt like you were being the janitor?
I'm probably not actually a good janitor because my desk.
So it's a little bit more like you should be the janitor, but I'm going to be.
I've been
orchestrator.
Well, let me think of what I am. I need a better euphemism than the janitor. I mean, one good example that I still do regularly is like be a customer support agent and try to get involved directly with customers, even like maybe less fun cases, and help them out and go through that. That's a really good one where helps you learn what needs to be done.
I kind of get the vibe that, Napoleon, when he was like fighting a battle, he had a much better idea than like his opponents of what the battlefield looked like and where to position troops and what to kind of like tackle to be, find a great competitive advantage. How do you kind of think about that in positioning the company so that you can win?
I think about that a lot. And like I try to meet as many leaders of either competitors or like other similar companies as I can to gain their perspective. That's why I loved your interview with Jim Bilosick at Senkatsen, because they're doing awesome stuff with in the digital fabrication world. And I think of it as like it's like a shortcut, because like here's like a capable person who has spent their whole career gaining a bunch of knowledge from a different perspective with different access to different things and whatever. And like, you can pretty quickly just absorb
all of the
yeah.
learnings that they've got.
Yeah. So I think that's a really valuable thing. And then like with your direct competitors, definitely that idea that like you should know, not just you should know the battlefield better than they do. Like, I think you should know what they're doing better than they do, and like understand why they're doing it differently than you. Because usually there's some things you should actually learn. Like, even if you think they're doing it wrong, like understanding how they got to that place, there's probably
What
some
wrong
things you're
assumptions
missing.
they were making, or
Yeah.
I know there's this line that I love, which is like, never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake.
Yeah. But I think that's a Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
Art of War. It's a good one.
Can you walk me through the different like iterations of your supply chain and how that's worked throughout the years as you've been kind of building all the different products?
Yeah. So yeah, there's been a lot of iterations in the supply chain. The Form 1 was built with a contract manufacturer in San Diego, then the Form 2 in Hungary. Form 3 and onwards, hardware products have been contract manufacturers in China and Guangdong. The materials, we started working with a contract manufacturer, or they call it a toll manufacturer in the materials world. And then eventually we became a large customer of theirs, and we saw enough reasons that made sense to own it ourselves. So we acquired them. So we own a chemical plant in Ohio. Lately, we've been moving some hardware manufacturing to Vietnam to deal with tariffs and things like that. And then with each like product generation, there's usually like different key components that we have to dive deep into. So I talked about developing galvanometers. That's been like one manufacturing challenge. Form 4 and 4L use an LCD instead of galvos to create the optical image. And so we had to custom fabricate LCDs, and that's like a totally different world, and become experts in that. Well, I wouldn't say we're experts, but
proficient. Yeah.
That's really scary, but maybe kind of fun.
Why scary?
Because the LCDs are the single most expensive things that we've bought. It's basically like $1 million each time you want to make a new LCD. So that's we're not used to that level of like commitment for a single part. There's a lot of key like polymer, like the resin tanks in stereolithography have these special polymer films that we've had to invest in. Actually, hopefully the sound won't come in here, but the milling machine right now is machining a special tool for special kind of precision tool for some of the plastic parts that we make.
When I was doing some research, I was very surprised by like the lack of cash. Like, you guys haven't raised a huge amount of money, up until like 2021 when SoftBank came in and stuff. But like prior to that, do you think that the constraints of not having huge amounts of cash was positive, or what impact that had?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you're building a hardware product company like this, and especially one where we don't just manufacture stuff, we manufacture stuff for manufacturers. Like, the whole game of manufacturing is about cost.
Right.
If we don't have cost discipline deeply ingrained in the company, not going to make it in this field. And you talked about like Tesla versus all the other new EV companies. It's like a great example. You can just see it in the money they're spending and raising. Like, car manufacturers are, great gross margin for a car manufacturer is 25%. Like, you have to if
you're like an absolute killer and have lots and lots of optimization over years.
Yeah. So you have to have that like throughout the company. So yeah, we've had that. And I think we've raised too much money. I mean, we raised 250 million. We could have done this for sure. Much less the second time around if I got a chance.
Why did you decide to go out and raise that money instead of not doing that?
The decision to raise money and spend money should be completely independent decisions. Unfortunately, even even disciplined companies fail to keep them separated, but they can be. They're not really directly connected at all. So raising money, generally, when the valuation is high and people are interested, raise some money.
It's like catnip a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad we raised a bunch of money in 2021 because nobody's excited about 3D printing today. It's not a hot field for, at least for like Silicon Valley venture capital types. But that's fine. We're profitable and growing and don't need the money.
How early into the journey did you become profitable?
We haven't been consistently profitable until the last couple years. But since Kickstarter, since like the 12th month, most of the money we've spent has come from customers or, yeah. So we're steadily burning money, but but I think we had that discipline that like mostly we're going to, live off the revenue that we make.
You could see the inflection of the J curve.
Yeah. And I think we always ended up being a little further than we thought. I mean, and we should have just forced it to be sooner, honestly. If we just constrained ourselves and said we're going to do it, I think we would have I think we could have spent $100 million less on sales and marketing in the last 6 or 7 years and gotten the exact same result that we did.
On the kind of like being frugal aspect, what kind of tilted your hand into deciding to spend the money in the first place if you could have done it on way less money had you done it a different way?
Well, we didn't think we were just blowing the money. We thought that, okay, like we went through a couple cycles of like, okay, now we made it with this product generation and like we just need to turn the crank on sales and marketing and scale it up. And on some level that may be true, like if you're not spending any money on that and you haven't done the basics, but where we were, it was not good ROI.
Yeah. I know, Jim, we mentioned this briefly before things started rolling on the like fun coupons, where he kind of like lubricates his business with $100 bills, just to kind of reinforce good behavior and like behavior that he likes. Has there been anything like that with your company on kind of like, doing a nice thing for a supplier or something like that?
Where for our Chinese suppliers, we make, actually, I think we do it for all our global suppliers, but started in China. We make the Chinese zodiac animal, like we make like a 3D printed and painted statue every year of that, for that year and send that out to all the key suppliers. I think key supplier relationships, we have like a supplier summit every year where we bring them together. We do have like awards for the best ones. And we have some that we've worked with since the beginning. There's some like a CNC shop in China that's it's like a one owner, like 15 machine shop that we've worked with since the beginning of the company. He texts me regularly and that's been a good partnership.
Earlier this year, when things kind of got a little fucked on the tariff side, I imagine if you're shipping to like 100+ countries and you have operations all over the world, that would have had a massive impact on your company and like planning or trying to plan for a few years.
Yeah.
What impact did that have?
It definitely was very disruptive within the walls of Formlabs. Their like operations team had to drop a lot of what they're doing for an extended period. And basically we were having like weekly meetings for a few months of just like, what's the latest thing that Trump tweeted? Okay, what are we doing about it?
Do you have like the screen that's just like new tweets?
Yeah, it was very hard to even track what the hell is going on. It was like, well, this is the impact of the announcements from the week before, and then but this week, do they override those ones or really, really disruptive? It hasn't been as once we worked through it all, and we did make a variety of changes. Like, hasn't dramatically increased our costs, in part because we are so international and we manufacture in the US and different places. So like the amount of trade we have going in through any one country pair is not that big.
A little bit of reflexivity.
Yeah. But one thing I think that's really not like a story that's not well told there is I'm pretty sure tariffs have helped Chinese companies over American companies on net. because within given product categories, things are pretty much all made in the same place. So like Apple makes their phones in the same place that Huawei makes their phones. And that's true in like all categories. But oftentimes there is a US brand and a Chinese brand. And where there is that competition in a lot of categories, the Chinese companies, they're basically, compared to American companies, they're essentially always faster at like, so if you throw a change at them, if you throw a change at an American company, a Chinese company, that's just going to help the Chinese company because they're going to adapt faster. So if they need to reroute their supply chain or, change things, like the Chinese companies are all moving faster. And I really think they're like actually gaining ground, not necessarily from tariffs specifically, but through like disruptive policy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I imagine in the case of like Apple, if they are designing California and then manufactured in China, if Huawei is just built in China, designed in China, they can just go to their factory and make changes immediately, whereas Apple has a lot more like time,
inertia. Yeah.
When a problem is thrown at you, what is your typical like mental model for how to deal with it and like come up to speed and make the right call, even on a new kind of like area of the map?
I think I talked about probably two most important principles. One is focus on the problem and not the solution. So spend some time understanding what is the problem, because it almost never comes stated correctly. Like someone will say we're having a problem with this supplier or whatever, but like they actually mean the product is too expensive to manufacture. And like maybe there's a different way to address that problem. So like start with understanding what's the actual root problem. Not usually by the time someone's asked you, they've already kind of formulated in the form of what they think the solution is. And the other one is basically be lazy and learn as much from what other people have done as possible. Like there's very few totally unique problems in the world. And so you don't need to figure it out from scratch. And if you can, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's like the right analogy. Like whenever we're trying to develop a new part of our business, say like, how do we sell our products in Japan or something? We spend a lot of time with like, what companies are doing something similar to what we do and how do they do it? And like, here's maybe 3 options. And you can do that across almost every type of problem you want to solve.
What's been the biggest moment where you felt like you were being lazy and kind of just trying to adopt something and it like rapidly, speeded up some process?
I'm struggling to think of a good example, but there's a fun quote from a German general from the interwar period who has this theory on his officers. He says there's 4 types of officers, basically lazy versus smart. Lazy versus hardworking, and smart versus dumb, and the 4 combinations. And he said that the smart and hardworking ones, they're your like general HQ staff. It's good. The lazy and stupid ones, that's like most of what you have, and they're gonna like do some kind of job. And then the lazy and hardworking, those are the most dangerous. You have to get rid of them because they're gonna muck things up.
They're gonna do lots of stuff, and it's not good.
Yeah. And then he says that lazy and smart are suited for the highest leadership. And I don't think he's using the word like lazy as in like doesn't want to work, but lazy as in you're careful about how you spend your time. And I think that is a good trait for leaders, is that you make sure that each thing you're spending time on is really worth doing, and not necessarily jump on every single thing that could be done. Should we talk about Ukraine stuff? Should we get that in?
What's going on in Ukraine?
What's going on in Ukraine? So people use 3D printers for all sorts of stuff, including aerospace stuff. And lately they've been using it a lot for making drones. And we've got like Western companies like Lockheed and Anduril who use a bunch of our products. But in the last year or so, we also have a lot of users in Ukraine. And today, like every drone that you see in Ukraine is covered in printed parts. There's a really huge volume of it. And then I was born in New Jersey, but my parents both grew up in Ukraine, and so I'm going to go in a few weeks to Ukraine for the first time. Kind of a combination of a personal trip. Hope to do some philanthropy as well, and then like basically supporting, encouraging usage of 3D printing in Ukraine. And there's crazy things like the two things our printers get used for there is drones and like prosthetics. So literally the same technology is like blowing people up and then also repairing them.
How do you feel about that on that kind of?
I don't think I would ever make my career about making weapons. Although I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Let me revise that. I'm glad that I live in a peaceful time in the United States, and I don't think that's like the most important thing that I could do. But I definitely support Ukraine defending itself, and then our products get used in all sorts of different ways, and we don't really like take a position on that. It's like literally everything from dentists to people making sex toys to people making drones. Like that's 3D printing.
I think most people that go into Ukraine, or at least the people that I know, are like flying to Poland and then have to take like a long train ride into Ukraine. Are you going to have to do that?
Fly to Poland and take like 13-hour overnight train to Kiev. And then I'll also go to Lviv. I'm going to go with my father. He grew up in Lviv.
What like trips have you taken over the past 14 years that have had the most like meaningful impact on you?
Probably to China. China's where our hardware products are made. China is the global leader in plastics manufacturing, and you could call what we do 3D printing, or you could call it plastics manufacturing. And China will be the global leader in essentially every field of technology in the coming years. So it's really important and inspirational to see that. I've been going for, I guess, first time in 2014, and I've been to most of the major cities. And even in that period of time, to see the amount of development and to see a society that's organized very differently and not always in the way I would prefer it, but in a way that does seem to be for like the impact I want to make on the world, which is making it easier for people to make things and encouraging more problem solving in the physical world and all that. Like China's doing that a lot better than the US is doing that. So it's kind of like tied to my mission with Formlabs like pretty closely.
Yeah. So do you think on the China kind of being the leader in all like making things, is that a reversible trend, or do you just kind of see it as like an unstoppable wave and the best thing to do is lean in?
History repeats itself, and there have been many transitions of global leaders. And I think it's pretty clear that we are at the end of Pax Americana, as some people call it. I don't think that means the United States is done or like
it's over
it's
immediately.
Over. Yeah, it's not over. Yeah, these transitions take a long time. And then like, the last great empire was the United Kingdom. Like they're still around. It's smaller, but like people are doing things there. I do think it's sad. I would wish the American Empire would continue longer, but like that's such a big scale development. Like that's beyond anything that I can make a difference in. And by the way, one basic thing people about this like seem to be missing is just like literal just population. If you have a country that's as hardworking and entrepreneurial and smart, but they have 4 times more people than you, there's like not a lot.
You're fighting a real uphill battle there.
Yeah. Which is why any realistic like option for the US to be part of an alternative view of the future is going to be more than just the US. There's no US going it alone. Like basically we need 1 billion people working together if we wanted to have a power that can basically, if you want to have a complete tech stack, I'll just put it in technology terms, forget about like the politics. If you want to have a complete tech stack in the modern world, as our like tech stack gets taller and taller and taller, and you need more and more components adding it up to it, like think about how much goes into a jet engine, like thousands of companies contributing amazing pieces of technology, or into a state-of-the-art microchip. Today, to maintain a full, complete tech stack now requires like 1 billion people. So that's what's happened. It didn't used to. It used to maybe only take 100 million. Now it takes 1 billion.
The things are way more complex today.
There's just too many things to do. We can't all do them inside one country.
Interesting. If you had to be teleported back to any point in history, to either a company or becoming a general of an army, who would that person be that you would like to trade places with?
I don't have an exact answer to that question, but I am really fascinated with Bell Labs. I grew up in New Jersey in New Providence, which is next to where Bell Labs was headquartered in Murray Hill. And my mom worked at Bell Labs, and it's kind of into its declining years. But that place is just amazing. Like literally a couple of campuses in New Jersey invented half of all modern computing and telecommunications, like a few thousand people. And
they're punching a little bit above their weight.
Yeah, punching way above their weight. And I would love to be part of creating something even like a fraction as important as that. There's a great book, Idea Factory, about the history that I recommend for anyone who's interested in that.
What did you take from that?
I think the couple of things that are really interesting about Bell Labs, like they were probably, now it's become a bit more common with big tech companies, but they were, I think, one of the first places that recognized like, yeah, you can just like assemble super smart people. Like you have to go and find them hiding in their holes in different like university groups. But like if you just bring very smart people together from a bunch of different fields and put them like together, like you can make amazing things happen. And that was not like a history of doing that in basically anywhere in any form in the world. And then in terms of like what it takes to create a new Bell Labs, which I would love to, again, make something even close to that. There's two things you need. I think the thing that everyone talks about is you need a super profitable monopoly that spins out billions and billions of dollars every year, like AT&T or maybe like Google. But I think what Google and Microsoft and other modern attempts at Bell Labs have missed is the other key thing that AT&T had, which is an extremely diverse problem space. So AT&T like had to do everything. They literally like had to make the telephone handsets to the switching equipment to like telephone poles. Like they had to figure out how to make a telephone pole that lasts 50 years.
They had to figure out all the infrastructure and all the pieces and parts that go into it.
So many different domains. And that goes well with more open-ended long-term research, because the problem that a Google has is like, if they just want to invent things, they don't have any expertise. This goes back to that problem versus solutions thing. Like they're just throwing solutions at the wall. They don't have any expertise in the problems. Whereas AT&T had this rich space of problems where like you could ask some people just like invent random stuff, and then AT&T can like look at their list of problems and be like, yeah, I think we could use that to like put satellites in space and send phone calls through them. And that made it like, I think it was a better match for open-ended development. So Formlabs, I don't have the path for how we're going to make a super profitable monopoly, still working on that path, but at least we have a very rich problem space that I think can consume like lots of different types of invention.
If you're trying to recreate the modern day Bell Labs inside of this company and you don't have the monopoly yet, what is your thought process for doing that?
I don't think we're really into the making Bell Labs phase yet. Like we need to make a whole lot more money before we can really take that on. I do think we're assembling people like that, but today we're much more focused on how do we make a product that we can sell a few years from now that we're going to deliver to a lot of people and they're going to get a lot of value from. And there's some open-ended invention there, but it's a different type of work. So I think we're going to keep working on getting great at that, and then maybe slowly
Down the
add
road.
in more of, more. I mean, we are slowly adding in more and more long-term projects and things like that.
Do you think of this as kind of your last company?
It doesn't feel good to think about anything as my last anything at this stage in life. But I don't like, I think regularly everyone should do this in a career. You should like consider what you're doing and think about, is this the best thing you could be doing? Or is there a better thing you could be doing by your own, whatever your metric is? And I keep coming back to yes for Formlabs, but I don't know if that'll always be true. And Formlabs can be a lot of things for me, like covers like a lot of different interests in technology and making, but not everything. Like I really like airplanes. I would love to somehow work on airplanes in some form. Maybe someday.
Work with like Boom or Astromechanica or something like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a few parts of flight I'm interested in. Like one specific thing I've been thinking about for a long time is a couple companies have tried is a transportation solution between ocean cargo and air freight. Like they vary widely in speed and cost, like 30 times in speed and 10 times in cost. Like, is there no way to like have something somewhere in the middle? And there's these like airships and ground effect aircraft and things like that that might be solutions to that problem. And then eVTOL is very interesting. I think it's still a ways away from a flying car, but like I do think we're on a trajectory towards flying car.
One of the things that I kind of love from Steve Jobs is he said, I think in his speech at like Stanford, the commencement speech, he was talking about like every day he wakes up and he looks at himself in the mirror, and he would ask himself if today, if the thing that I'm doing today was like the last thing that I was going to be doing, am I happy with what I'm doing today? And if there's like too many days in a row where the answer is no, I'm not enjoying this, and there's not like a clear path to getting to the thing where I do enjoy, then he kind of like changes direction. Has there ever been a moment, you've been at this for 14 years, has there been a moment during that time where you kind of had that same situation where you decided at one point or another to change direction?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where I've been less committed and thinking about other things, and I think the like day-to-day enjoyment of what I've been doing is like always okay, but I more just like worry, like, is this the most impactful thing I can be doing? Like there's so many big problems to work on tackle. And should I be working on a bigger one? It's kind of like the lazy thing again. Like, is this really what I should be getting out of bed for, or is there like something even bigger to get out of bed for?
So and how did you decide like that it was when you were going through that thought process?
I think you have to consider alternatives. So you do like, I do pay attention to lots of other interesting developments in the world, and I don't know. I don't have like a perfect rubric for it, but I was just in San Francisco this past weekend, and that's always like a good way to spend a weekend in San Francisco, and you'll talk to 100 people with 100 huge ideas. So it's like a good way to quickly run through like, maybe I would do that one. Not interested in those ones. do that. Go to San Francisco every few months, and if you come back still committed to what you're doing, then
you're probably doing it right.
Going. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah. All right. Final question. What's the hardest thing you've overcome?
Learning to be a team player. It's not the words that I want.
What do you mean by that?
I've always liked to be on a team. Like I've always liked team sports. But I've never had to do something where I have to be so open about everything that I'm doing and thinking, and that actually really doesn't come naturally to me. That like part of my job is sharing my personal motivation for what we're doing and my enthusiasm for what we're doing, and my dreams about where this can go. And I'm not like opposed to sharing things, but like that becoming like part of your job, like that's been difficult for me to learn to do that well. Yeah.
How did you like kind of figure out over time that that was something that you needed to be doing when it wasn't something natural?
I mean, as you get into a bigger organization, there's like a basic sort of like Dunbar number kind of limit thing where like if you've got 20 people, you probably talk to every one of them once a week or something, and so they
just know exactly, intuitively what you're going after and why you're doing it.
But once you get to a larger organization or a larger customer base, or you have to start communicating in like a more of a broadcast fashion, and you just see this like it's just sort of like math. Like if you want to impact that number of people, like you have to start broadcasting. And I don't know. I really, this is much better for me when I'm talking to someone and like I can kind of think about what they're thinking about and like you can interact. But when you just have to like share without any feedback, so hard.
Yeah, you're throwing the why out into the abyss and hoping.
Yeah, and like, why is there no response? Like, it's like, I mean, social media. You don't do it. I've been trying a little bit, but I really don't get like I don't understand like and how people do it and just like keep throwing things out there and just like seeing what sticks and